Welcome to an honest conversation on the age-old problem of anti-Semitism, where we try to uncover the reasons for and, as importantly, the solution for this persistent issue. Please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. With us is Michael Laitman, Doctor of Biocybernetics, PhD in Philosophy and Kabbalah, author of more than 50 books, translated into 18 languages, including Like a Bundle of Reeds, Why Unity and Mutual Guarantee Are the Call of the Hour. And our guest today, I'm really happy to have Moussa Al-Hassan Diaw. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Moussa Al-Hassan Diaw.
Moussa Al-Hassan from Austria, who's the founder and chairman of DIRAD, Austria, where he serves as an assignee and contractual partner to the Federal Ministry of Justice in Austria for de-radicalization and prevention in prisons, interventions and training concerning jihadism and political Salafism. He has served as a consultant on religious extremism for the Chancellor of the State, Brandenburg in Germany, and he teaches at the University of Vienna, and I'm very happy to have him with us today. We got to talk before, and I really hope that we're going to unpack a lot of interesting concepts today and try to get a step closer to the issue that is at the center of this conversation. So hello, everyone. And I actually want to start with you, Moussa, just to, I think not many people know exactly what exactly is it that you do. What does the RAD do? What do you do as someone who works in de-radicalization? Maybe you can give us briefly.
Yes, actually, we deal with people who were or who did join a terrorist organization or made propaganda for a terrorist organization, financed a terrorist organization, or were even terrorist active within, for example, the Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State. And what we do is prevention of violent extremism with people who are in jail, who are in prison because of that, who were convicted. And so it's pedagogical work, so to say. So we teach them and we use alternative narratives and counter narratives to counter their extremist ideology in prison. And after they are released from prison and they're on probation, we continue to talk with them. We also teach police officers, for example, or prison officers and social workers, teachers, and so on. We do workshops. Now we do a lot of webinars, for example. And we also have formers who used to be terrorists who work with us and help us to do this work because they are authentic narrators when it comes to counter narratives or alternative narratives. So that's what we actually do in brief, to tell you this very short. There's a lot to say about it, but that's what we do. And part of our work is also interfaith dialogue, interreligious dialogue, and also Muslim-Jewish dialogue, for example.
And I'm curious about this thing. What do you think causes people to be radicalized? That word, like what makes people take up such causes in the first place? Maybe if we understood that, that would help us understand other aspects of extreme attitudes between people.
Well, there are various reasons. Very common is, and this is what our studies showed. We made 2 studies on extremism here in Austria with people who were extremists or were convicted for extremism, also with women in our second study. We have different push and pull factors which make people radicalize. Push factors are very often social strain, the quest for identity, who are we, the feeling of being marginalized from society because of ethnical background, religious background, cultural background, or if you are a part of a social class, so to say, and you have the understanding you are not accepted in society. And then pull factors could be organizations, cults, religious groups, peer groups, whatever, who offer you what you are missing in your life, an identity, a solution to your problems, a society which should be changed to a just society because you're living now in an unjust society. And that's what every extreme cult does, may it be left-wing extremism, right-wing extremism, religious extremism, whatsoever. So part of our work is also to deal with right-wing extremists, for example, in prisons. And we even have one left-wing extremist because he was mistaken for an Islamist. And it turned out he's a left-wing extremist. And there are various factors, and there's always an individual factor. So every individual we have to deal with has a personal reason, a personal story behind it. And we have people who are not from an Islamic or Muslim background. They are born German-speaking Austrians with a Christian background, a Christian family, for example. And we also have people with a Chechen background, for example, and almost 50% of the people who joined ISIS, or the so-called Islamic State, from Austria, had a Chechen background due to their experience and traumatization in a war zone during the 90s. And so you could see there are various reasons why an individual could get radicalized. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Dr. Laitman, what is the reason, according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, which is a wisdom that investigates human nature at its heart, what is the reason, according to Kabbalah, that people would have such attitudes, would join such organizations, sort of leave their normal life and develop such attitudes?
I think it's a problem that people don't understand, that they first have to study what nature requires of us. And this whole method, the method of nature, which incidentally both Muslims and Jews and Christians, it is the same method for everyone, which is love and connection, bonding, human bonding. And we have to try to make love cover all the crimes. But because our ego works against it, every direction looks at its own ego as the leading, and then we get radicalists to the right, to the left, to every religion and even without religion. And that's what we see. That's how we see that it's working. So all in all, the human ego that's working in each and every one of us, and in each and every nation, and in each and every religion, this ego destroys everything. If we want to rise above it, then we don't need to tie ourselves to any specific religion or direction, but only to one thing: to rise above the human ego and teach people to unite with others above any difference. That's it.
So just so I'm clear, and by the way, Moussa, I if you have questions, jump in. I'm merely moderating the discussion, but I do want to have a follow-up to Dr. Laitman. Are you saying that this tendency for radicalization, this ego, exists in everyone? Everyone is potentially carries these attitudes inside of them?
It is because our ego deflects us from the right path, from the middle line, and pulls us to the right or to the left. This is why all the people basically see themselves as closer to one of these two directions, right or left. But if we were going according to the middle line, which follows the path of Abraham, which to both Moussa and myself It's the same force that said, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the main thing. Then we would be working only on the connection between us over all the crimes, meaning we always had struggles and strifes, each with himself and within each group, but we always were striving to maintain the middle line. You can't come to a state where there are no wars within a person, because the evil inclination always pulls you in every direction. But the evil inclination works in this way only so that people would scrutinize to what extent they were going on the middle line, to what extent they were nonetheless going toward connection above all the differences.
Moussa, I'm curious. What do you see in people who go through this process of radicalization, and what really brings them back ultimately, or helps them kind of balance that? Do you see any correlations to these ideas?
Well, actually, yeah, that's it. I mean, I always use simple examples when we do our workshops or our lectures on radicalization, because people always believe radicalization is something which could not happen to them. It's a problem of the others, whoever the others are. But there are simple examples when it comes to the ego. If you are in a traffic jam, for example, or you're overtaken by a faster car, or you're looking for a parking place with your car, and somebody comes up first, and you wanted to park, and he jumps in, so to say, in the parking lot instead of you, then you start to quarrel. Maybe you get angry. You have this fight on the street. Things like that, or maybe you quarrel with your neighbor over his shoes outside the door because his tree is too big and it's in your garden, parts of it, stuff like this, simple stuff. So it's very often, of course, your ego, you can get, so to say, radicalized, angry very fast, and you might do something which is very stupid, maybe not rational, and you have street fights going on, road rage and stuff like this. And it's the same with people who lack something in their life, who lack something because of social reasons, cultural reasons, identity conflicts, stuff like this. And then there's somebody who offers you a radical solution. It's true, radicals never walk the middle line. They are always looking for radical solution to change everything. They don't try to connect to other people. They try to fight other people because they believe now we are in a position to be strong and we don't need other people. We just want to push our ideas forward. Therefore, it's justified to fight against other people. So when the method is used like violence to reach one's goal, ideological goal or whatever, it becomes a problem, of course, where you have to push or fight back, or you need sanctions, measures from the state. And there's something going on before somebody wants to use violence. He is radicalized, and you can hear it, the way he talks about the others, the so-called the others, the way how he try to move him out of the space of the public, out of the space of other people. He don't want to connect with other people. Yeah. And then you realize, okay, this person is in a slow process of radicalization.
You know, it's interesting you describe this. And I live in New York, and it sounds, if I didn't know that you're working with radicals, jihadi radicals in prisons, I would think you're describing the situation that's happening in American society. It seems like people they're behaving radically. They're very angry. They don't have the patience for others. There's no connection with others. What's happening? Is this something that is inevitable?
Well, I think you can see this, you could see this during the 1930s, for example. During the economic crisis all over the world, people became radical and vulnerable for radical ideas. Let it be left-wing extremism, communism, or let it be fascism, authorism, or National Socialism in Europe, for example. Because the people had a lack of social and economical resources. So they wanted a solution. They need a scapegoat who's responsible. Then you can find a group which you could hate to, channel your hate to somebody else instead of maybe hating yourself or the situation you're in. And then a radical solution to change everything to make a life better. And I think we have, as far as I could see, I'm not living in America, but I could see on the news, you have a divided society, it seems. You have people on the so-called left or liberal side. You have people on the so-called right wing side. And you have this battle about protection of nose and mouth concerning COVID-19. And it becomes an ideological battle. That's really crazy to see. People claim, well, it does not really exist, this illness, or it's just a small influenza, a small flu. It's not very dangerous. And you have people who support one political party, and you have people who support the other political party, and they use the symbol of mouth and nose protection as a symbol of belonging to the right group. And you have, as far as I could see, an ongoing crisis that especially, if I could say it like this, white people from the middle class are losing their jobs, their money, their houses, and so on. And it makes them maybe more radical right now. For example, you have this during a time of crisis, people become radical, of course. It could be a personal crisis, or it could be a crisis within society.
Right, Dr. Laitman, but this has to do with human nature, not and the situation, as I hear you say, is really just a trigger of something that is inherent in people, in everyone. The question is, maybe you can tell us what is kind of how the Kabbalah talks about the development of this of these inner forces in a person. Where does it come from? Maybe you can give us a concise history of that development, so we can all kind of hear this. This is something actually natural and not something new or artificial.
The wisdom of Kabbalah is indeed a very ancient wisdom. It comes from Babylon. This is what Abraham taught the residents of Babylon and what came out of it. The wisdom of Kabbalah says that in the end, we have to achieve connection among us, bonding. Especially today, it's being realized in human society. This is why we're going through the coronavirus crisis. This pandemic must take us through such states that we will see that there is no choice but to come to a state where we understand that we have no other way other than connection. Because in the end, at the end of our development, and we are approaching the end of our development, we have to know that our ego is bad, that this is the evil, and to understand that being connected together and congruent with a round, global, integral nature is really our goal. And this is what we have to achieve. This is why the extreme movements on the right and on the left, the various viruses, and there will be many more of them, unless we connect ourselves to the general plan of nature. So all those things come to us so that we will understand that we have to be congruent, adjusted to the integral nature of all of reality. All of nature is like that, other than human beings. And humankind has to, through its correction, through its educational process, has to come to a state where all of us unite together so that there is no difference between black, white, red, yellow, between the 70 nations of the world, and everything will be above it, and love will cover all the crimes. The wisdom of Kabbalah has been speaking about it for millennia. It comes to us from the first Kabbalist, who was called Adam, and then through Abraham, who came 20 generations after Adam, and from then on, it permeated all the religions, and especially to Islam and Judaism. It was concealed there, of course. It wasn't that conspicuous. In Islam, it came mainly through the Sufis. I was connected to several representatives of them who, in my eyes, are very respectable people. And we all believe that now is the time, now in the age of the coronavirus, it is time for humanity to know the connection method and to begin to implement it, specifically to go against all the forces that try to set us apart, so that we come to a state that we will find connection among all the religions, all the belief systems, all the people, and we will be round, circular, connected around nature.
I
can talk some more, except I'm not sure what to say.
Well, I hear, it's interesting because I hear a lot of similarities, except Dr. Laitman, you speak of a general plan of nature. I'm curious, Moussa, how did you, what attracted you to anti-Semitism? I want to just, try to focus in on that for a second. What is your relationship to that?
First of all, I have to confirm what Dr. Laitman said. The different Sufi ways, their approach is to overcome the ego and to have love for the Creator and love for humankind. My father himself belongs to a Sufi community, because it's part of the people of the Fulani in this region to belong to Tijaniya Tariqa. And as he mentioned, this is something we have in common as belonging to a Sufi organization or Sufi group or Sufi way. That's a better term, the Sufi way. And Kabbalah, as far as I understand it, I don't understand Kabbalah, only what I have read about it. So this is very interesting to hear. And when it comes to your question about anti-Semitism, what attracted me, or why did I deal with anti-Semitism? I dealt with anti-Semitism because I dealt with various forms of racism. And I always wanted to understand the core behind racism. I did not understand why people which I met, let it be a teacher, let it be a neighbor, let it be even friends, books I read, encyclopedias I read, old German encyclopedias, what made people construct human races, so to say, just to justify power over them, or even to kill them. I wanted to understand it. That's also the reason why I studied history. And I could see racism as a European ideology, so to say. It doesn't mean racism only exists in Europe, don't get me wrong here, but as a system, as a so-called scientific system, even in literature, even famous people like Immanuel Kant, for example. He was a plain racist when he described people outside Europe. It's very interesting to see. even Voltaire, he was an unbelievable anti-Semitist, anti-Semit, for example. Or people like Ernest Renan, an Orientalist of the 19th century, and Ignaz Goldziher described his understanding of human races, so to say, the Aryans and the Semites and so on. And he used cultural implications, biological implication, religious implications. And I understood that anti-Semitism is, so to say, some form of a blueprint for various forms of racism. I wanted to understand the core of racism, and anti-Semitism, as mentioned, is a blueprint for racism like it was constructed as an ideology in the last 3 centuries, so to say. But we can even go back to the 15th century, when the Spaniards who reconquered or conquered Spain, how you want to put it, claimed, and they made laws who said a Muslim and a Jew who converted to Christianity can't be trusted. So because he has a Jewish or Muslim bloodline, so to say, or is from Muslim or Jewish heritage, you can't trust them. It's not about a belief system, it's about heritage, and therefore they became the others. And this was continued in various forms of anti-Semitism, and in the 20th century with National Socialism, it had its bitter and brutal outcoming in the Shoah, for example.
Right. So I wonder, so Dr. Laitman, is it true? Is anti-Semitism the root of other forms of hate and racism? Is it at the heart, or is it connected to other forms of hate?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's even written in many sources that the hatred that came to the world and dressed kind of in the human species, in humankind, it is because the Torah, the law that Abraham taught his children, if you could put it this way, one was a Jew, one was a Muslim. So that law that he taught, the Jews began to disrespect or disregard this law and didn't follow it properly, in the sense that love covers all the crimes and love your neighbor as yourself. And as a result, the rest of the Babylonians, from whom the entirety of the human society developed, the rest of the Babylonians began to hate the disciples of Abraham, namely the Jews, who later called themselves the people of Israel. So they began to hate them because those Jews stopped engaging in loving their neighbors as themselves. In other words, anti-Semitism developed as a result of the people of Israel not doing among themselves, not keeping among themselves the law of love above all the differences, and not projecting it, transferring it, conveying it to the rest of the world. And therefore, everyone relates to them negatively. And to this day, we can see it. If we explained to the whole world that religions are only in order to bring everyone to love, to unity, above all the differences, then of course the relation toward the Jews would be different, and anti-Semitism wouldn't thrive.
And that would also affect other forms of hate and racism and problems.
Of course, it's the foundation, it's the basis of any hatred and racism in the human species, because we're all descendants of Babylon, and in Babylon it developed. You can't help it. That's human nature. We were meant to bring the method of connection, the way Abraham taught us, and we didn't pass it on. That connection comes above all the crimes, and this is why we are hated by everyone to this day.
But
It's written in many sources of Kabbalah.
But the question is, Moussa, is this something that you hear from people that you speak to, from when you speak to Muslim anti-Semites or other people who express these ideas? Do they talk about it in this way, or is this something that's concealed from them as well?
No. I speak from a European perspective, so to say, or from a Muslim perspective. The narrative of Jews being the enemy of humans or of God started much earlier, because it seemed like, in a historical way, like a competition between Christians who were, so to say, angry because Jewish people did not accept the Messiah, Isa or Jesus, and they claimed as a narrative, Jewish people killed Jesus, and later on, because of Trinity, they killed God, so to say. And this religious narrative, this anti-Jewish religious narrative, became during the period of Enlightenment a scientifical, biological narrative of anti-Semitism. It was anti-Judaism for religious reasons, and all these narratives like Jewish people have to slaughter Shechtia Christian children to get the blood to make matzah bread with it, for example, is a very old narrative. You could see it on churches as a murals, for example, showing Jewish rabbis Shechtia slaughtering a Christian child to use the blood for Jewish religious ceremonies, which is, of course, it's a lie, but it was a part of the anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic narratives. And later on, when it comes to anti-Semitism within different Muslim communities, you could see on the Hezbollah TV channel, Al-Manar, you could see the same narrative, which is centuries old, in form of a plays, of a TV series about Jews and the evil. So it's a narrative, an ongoing narrative, which at least in the 20th century became part of different political, ideological groups within the Muslim communities, for example. So that's the way, but I've never heard, at least from others, that they say, as far as I understood, it's the fault of Jewish people, or the mistake of Jewish people, because they, as far as I understood, they stopped loving other people. That's not the reason they claim it. And if we come to new forms of anti-Semitism, the new right-winged organizations, they claim that Jewish people, it's also an old narrative, Jewish people rule the world, they control the banks.
No, it's clear, and we see it now in the left as well, by the way. Now it's starting to happen on the left. A very famous Jewish writer in the New York Times just resigned the other day because she was receiving, from her liberal co-workers, receiving terrible attitudes, derision, and really being oppressed against her writing on the Jewish issue. So you can see it in many sides. What I'm curious about is how to make that connection between these old narratives, which obviously are not going away, and the story, Dr. Laitman, that you're saying that Jews have to love. Do people need to first understand that they hate the Jews because they're not displaying an example of love to each other? Is this part of the process of correction here?
So what do Jews need, if that's the case? The fact that they are not carrying out love your neighbor as yourself, and are not setting an example of this, to all of humanity. I heard about it more than once. Now, what does the world want from the Jews, if that's the case? What are the complaints? Let's say I, as a Jew, what should I do so I wouldn't be hated? I don't understand what the world wants. But really, I see no reason. Each person and each nation wants to exist. And therefore, it does what it needs to do in order to guarantee for itself the best existence that it can. The fact that Jews succeed is because they are an ancient nation and have developed so that they have these internal qualities that help them come out of any negative situation. Let's see what happens with the corona. I'm actually anticipating the coronavirus to change the Jews significantly, so that they will understand that they have to open up to the world the method of correction, which is, again, the connection of love and unity of everyone above all the differences, and that the world will listen because they'll be pressed by the virus more and more. And then we'll come to a state where that law of connection that exists in Judaism, in the wisdom of Kabbalah specifically, but also in Sufism, that these laws, these attitudes, approaches will help us achieve correction. And then the world will finally calm down from all those extreme movements, from basically the human ego.
So does that mean that radicalized people who have this deep hate clothed in different narratives towards the Jews, it's not even their fault? Is it like all the responsibility of the Jewish people? Surely people have their own responsibility for their actions. They need to...
All in all, it is the Jews' responsibility. If Jews were disseminating the method of correction, the method of connection, the method of love with all their might to the whole world, not in a way that they patronize, if they did that, the whole world would treat them differently. Anti-Semitism would disappear and the world would calm down. I hang all of my hopes of connection and peace and the world's good future on the right behavior of the Jews. Yes. You could say, I blame them for everything. That's the way it comes out, you know. That's how it turns out to be.
How does this sound, Moussa?
Well, this is the teaching of a rabbi, a doctor, on Kabbalism. As I mentioned before, I don't understand Kabbalism. I don't know Kabbalism. Of course, I like the idea because it shows what seems to be the one core of the teaching, to overcome the own ego. Don't blame others, but so to say, correct yourself first. And the way you are perceived by others could, might, or should change. From a point of view I have, I think even if all Jewish people on this earth would change their attitude to a positive attitude or an attitude, a monolith attitude of positiveness and love and so on, and a hardcore anti-Semite would not care, because if I just use or take George Soros as an example, with his foundation, as far as I understand, he's trying to achieve good things on earth, and but from anti-Semites or from political opponents, what he understands as doing something good, in their eyes or from their perspective, it is something bad. So you even have the example of Jewish people who try to adapt to their surrounding. I mean, in the 19th and 20th century, or Karl Marx would be an example, or his family of Karl Marx would be an example. They tried to change their religion. They converted to Christianity. They changed their names, for example. I mean, a very good example is Theodor Herzl. He joined a Burschenschaft. I don't know. It's a student corps, and they are known to be right-winged. And he was very angry about Jewish people coming from Eastern Europe to Vienna because of their black dresses, Orthodox Jews. And they said their foreign look, the way they look, the foreign clothes, black clothes and so on, this could provocate anti-Jewish sentiments or anti-Semitism. But he changed his way of looking on Jewish people to be assimilated in Europe, because he realized during the Dreyfus affair in France, this was an assimilated officer, and all means of anti-Semitism worked on him, and he was convicted as a traitor, and he understood it doesn't work like that, and therefore I could say he became a radical, so to say. So I think anti-Semites, they don't care if Jewish people change their attitude and even became totally assimilated within one culture. I know it's not the goal of Kabbalah to assimilate. I understand it, but what I want to say is anti-Semites don't care about the attitude of Jewish people. They just want to hate them, and they need them as a scapegoat for their own worldview, for their own ideology. Nevertheless,
I agree partially with my friend, my new friend. I'm not sure what to say, but it seems to me that if Jews were to circulate the method of connection, and they can circulate it, they have the ties for it, the capabilities, then the world would nonetheless change toward them, or at least would understand what they're talking about, what they want. Otherwise, their role in history seems negative, because that's the only thing they need to circulate, the method of connection. And specifically now, in the days of the coronavirus, we have to see it, because only through connection between us, between all the people, can we overcome this pandemic. Otherwise, we're lost. Meaning, the troubles that we're beginning to feel lately, and the ones that are approaching, will force us to unite among us, but the way to unity can be either hard, painful, or good and easy. I really hope that through the right approach between us, between Muslims and Jews and Christians too, who for the time being are not so preoccupied with it, we will find the common path that will bring us to connection eventually of all the people. As it is written, that we have one upper force, one God, and it doesn't matter what you call it, God or Allah or Elohim, and we will come to the good connection. I really hope that these stages of the coronavirus are advancing us toward it quickly. And I'm happy that I met a man who I haven't heard until now such a broad perspective of everything that's happening. Someone with so much knowledge. I'm deeply impressed.
So, Moussa, in a couple of minutes, because we're at time, but how do you see the improvement in the situation, the betterment of relationship in the world, reaching that picture that Laitman described? Is this something that you see happening?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words of Dr. Laitman. I'm, from my nature, a bit of a pessimist, to be honest. But this also is the reason why I try to do, together with my colleagues, of course, work which I simply call social cohesion. So our quest is for social cohesion. And I know it's like Sisyphus. You will somehow never reach the goal and everything will be settled. It's an ongoing process. Every generation have to endure. That's the reason why people like Dr. Laitman needs to teach, and his disciples needs to teach other generations which will follow. As I said, I'm a bit of a pessimist, but I know we could overcome it if everybody in his position, in his place, could try to change the world to be a better place, to achieve social cohesion. I just want to come back quickly to emphasize again what I said. An anti-Semite even don't need Jewish people to be an anti-Semite. I give just one example of our work. It's very famous and common in parts of Muslim communities or certain ideological communities within the Muslims to boycott Western products, especially American products. There's always the combination USA, Israel, something like that. So they say you don't drink Coca-Cola. And during our workshops, we ask people, our youngsters, why do you not want to drink Coca-Cola? And the answer is very often because it's a Jewish product. Then I always do web research with them. It was back then, and I asked them, just look up who is the CEO of Coca-Cola company. And back then it was Muhtar Kent, a Turkish Muslim, so to say. They say, you see, he's a Turkish Muslim. He's not even Jewish. So it makes no sense to be anti-Jewish or rely on anti-Jewish resentment. If it doesn't work concerning Coca-Cola company, for example, it goes with other products too. And then they say, well, but maybe he's a Zionist. So they made him, so to say, a Jewish person. So anti-Semites don't need Jewish people to be anti-Semites. Racists don't need the people really to exist like they constructed in their brain to form their ideology.
Right. So Dr. Laitman, is education this really the solution? One person at a time?
I'm amazed. I'm amazed by these words and in general for having met such an enlightened, honest and profound individual to really understand these problems. To me, this was a pleasure to just listen and to speak with you. I hope we will get to see each other face to face and speak some more. And so thank you very much, my friend. I don't know. Leo, you keep connecting us. Good luck to you. Good luck. And may you have good health and success on your path.
Thank you, Moussa. Dr. Laitman, thank you for being with us in another honest conversation. Like, subscribe, comment on this channel. We hope to see more of this and hear more. As usual, I feel there's much more to talk about, but thank you, both of you, for taking the time to talk about this important issue of our connection. Thank you.